Hello, this is Coach Tim Campbell, and I'm your host for the Self-Made is a Myth, Make a Difference Together show, where we're talking with successful business owners and executives to hear their stories of the journey to building their business. And because we know that achieving success does not happen on our own, we are recognizing the folks who have helped us to excel. I'm excited to have a CEO from California with us today. My guest is a published author in 7 languages with a book he co-wrote called The Paradox of Excellence: How Great Performance Can Kill Your Business. He enjoys writing music and is currently writing a history book, which we'll ask him about here in a minute. He is most proud of 5 US patents, which means that he has helped to invent things that the government believes is both novel as well as useful. Please join me in welcoming Michael to the show today.
Good to see you, Tim.
Well, Michael, let's start with having you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your personal story, where you were born and about your family and hobbies and all that fun stuff.
Okay, so I was born in New England, did my childhood in New England. I was interested as a young child and really did 3 things. I was a swimmer, I was a musician, and I worked. Started working at a very young age, probably 10 or 11, and started to my academic career at music school, and then ended up at business school. I married, this will be my 34th year this year. I've got 2 kids, one who is in the cybersecurity space and one who is doing AI for gaming. And that's just a little bit of my background. I've been in California now for 33 or 34 years.
Wonderful. And tell us about the history book you're writing.
Yeah, so in doing some family history work just for fun, I discovered some things about the family that I did not know existed, a whole branch of our family. I actually went back almost 2,000 years.
Wow.
Because I found I was connected to some famous people. In the course of that process, I discovered some things that I did not know existed, and started to get very deep involved in that. So I've discovered that the world that we were taught was not the world as it was, that it was structured in a very different way. And so I'm having great fun doing that right now.
Interesting. So what's your goal in terms of publish date?
The book that I wrote, The Paradox of Excellence, was a parable. Everything was made up based upon some principles that were true. This book is the opposite. Everything that is in this book is true. And so the rigor that I have to go into to assert that it is true is an order of magnitude or 2 more complicated. I'm now at 2.5 years in this project. I've probably read between 3,000 to 5,000 pages, maybe more.
Wow.
Of academic research. I think I probably will take another year to write it. It's with the internet, you can't be wrong.
Right.
You lose a lot of credibility if you're wrong. So I'm spending a lot of time. It is my primary hobby at the moment.
Fantastic. Well,
I'm having a good time.
I was just going to say, it's a good thing that you enjoy it because you're investing a lot of time in it. So congratulations on that. Michael, is there a funny story that your family likes to tell about you that you'd be willing to share with us today?
Yeah, so it relates to the book. It relates to the book. What I've discovered is that the history was told through the lens of nations, but the history was not controlled by nations. They were controlled by people. And we'll learn that the Spanish discovered America and the Portuguese discovered Brazil and the Dutch ran the East India Company and all of these things and all of these changes in world history and in power. Yet they all had one thing in common. They were all led by Jews or people of Jewish background. Columbus, for example, was a Jew. Okay, and his story is not told that way because it's not convenient to be told that way. The discoverers of Brazil were Jewish. The ruler of the East India Company was Jewish. Even Alexander Hamilton and probably 2 or 3 presidents were Jewish, or of Jewish background.
Sure.
And so the joke within the family is, I think that everyone was a Jew at one point. that's the family joke right now is, even Christ was Jewish, which he was.
Yes. Yes.
So Charlemagne was Jewish. There's a lot of very, very interesting things that come out of that. But that's the joke in the family is, everybody is a Jewish.
Fantastic. Well, Michael, tell us about how the business came about, and at what point over the years did you have the confidence that you could run your own business?
Well, let me flip that.
Yeah.
Because I started my career in a very different way than most people, and I think it's better to tell it that way. So I was at music school, and I took a summer job working at a company called GTE in a group called Telenet. That group was the internet before the World Wide Web. And that GTE is now known as Verizon. Okay. And I discovered this thing called computers, that these computers could talk to other computers. And at the time, I was amazed that going to New England Conservatory, one of the biggest music places in the world, did not have all of the music of the world. The sheet music didn't exist. And I had this idea, what if you put the sheet music on a computer, then every place in the world would have access to all of the music. This is, by the way, 1984. So this was a long time ago. And I came home and I told my father I had this idea to start a company to do just that. I'm 19 years old or something like this. And he said, you will do that with what skills? You know how to play an instrument, but you certainly don't know how to run a company. And so I left music school and went to business school with the idea of starting a company. So my career started with me having the idea to start a business. I started a business in college. I had 15 employees in college. And so I always kind of had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. In the case of the company that I'm running now, it's a very strange story. In 1996, I was getting my MBA. And in the process of getting my MBA, I had to create a web business as a class project. I had to write a business plan and create a web business. We didn't have to actually implement the business, but we had to come up with a concept. And at the time, I was running the printer business for Canon in the United States. It was a big business, $600-700 million business. And I came up with an idea and did a business plan. Now, fast forward 15, 16 years, I am on a board of a small company, and that company has built a cool technology. And it was neat. I was very impressed with the CTO. And eventually what happened is I was asked to be chairman of that company. And when I came on board, I split the company in two. And I took the technology and we spun it out as a technology company. About 1 to 2 years into that business, it occurred to me, we were building the business I had written the business plan on.
Wow.
Almost 20 years earlier.
Wow.
The person who came up with the business was the technologist. It wasn't me, but it was incredibly similar. And that's just astonishing. It's not the typical story that you would have, but that's really what happened.
Wow.
In terms of the confidence to run a startup or run a business, after the first, I've been a CEO 6 times. After the first time, I told myself I would never run a company again. I did not want to run a company again. I didn't feel I was qualified. It took another 8 or 10 years before I had someone convince me to run it again. Again, I said I would never do it again. I've now been running companies almost 25 years or something in that order of magnitude. I now have confidence that I can, but it's still hard.
Yeah.
I joke with people that the reason why CEOs get paid the most is not because they're the best or the smartest, it's because it's hazard pay.
Mm. Right.
It's just the toughest job.
Yeah. So Michael, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing today, the company you're running.
Okay, so my company is called SYNQY, and we are a retail media technology platform. Now, what is retail media? If you look at Amazon, we think of Amazon as an e-commerce company, but Amazon loses money in e-commerce. Where they pay for the e-commerce business is they run ads on the e-commerce site. The vendors who are on the e-commerce site spend money to advertise on the site. How big a business is that for Amazon? That's somewhere in the order of magnitude of $32 billion a year. Amazon makes more money selling advertising than the entire newspaper industry combined. Amazon makes more money than YouTube. Amazon makes all of its retail profits from selling ads. The ad business subsidizes the e-commerce business. So we built a technology and a new kind of advertising that is designed to allow the competitors of Amazon, we don't sell to Amazon, but the competitors of Amazon to compete effectively with that for several reasons. One, we do not want the vendors to have too much sales concentration with Amazon because Amazon is a non-benevolent dictator, okay? And it's not good for the consumers to lack choice. And we want to help the retailers who compete with Amazon to be on an equal footing. And they don't have PhDs and all of this expertise. And we can bring tremendous expertise to those e-commerce companies, allow them to compete effectively. That's what we do.
And I know it's pronounce the name again, because I know it sounds
SYNQY.
different than it's spelled.
Yeah, SYNQY.
SYNQY.
We help really create a sync between the customer experience and the advertiser experience. We're delivering interactive, helpful information for the shopper and sync it at the time and place when the shopper is most receptive for that message, which is on the e-commerce site.
I love the genesis of this company that, you know, the law of attraction. I've been doing a lot of work lately with mindset and law of attraction. And so you attracted this business 20 years ago by developing the business plan.
And maybe
you just had to wait for the technology to catch up to you.
Well, and even you know, you had asked a question in some offline notes, what's been hard? We were early. Even at 20 years, we were early. And one of the things that I was a consultant for a long time, worked with a lot of big companies. And one of the things that is most critical is to get the timing right. Okay. I happened to work at Canon for a guy named Sabota. Sabota was a genius CEO. He had a guy work for him before he took that job. That guy that worked for him was Steve Jobs.
Wow.
Because he was the chairman of Next. And Next was a failure. And it was a failure not because they didn't have a good idea. I'm right now on a Mac. The Mac operating system used today is basically the Next operating system. Because all the guys who failed at Next came with Steve back to Apple. They were just 10 to 15 years too early. And so being early is as bad as being late. And if you can make it through, that's one of the key things that I've learned in my career is getting the timing right.
Yeah. So that cliche phrase is true. It's not just a cliche, that timing is everything.
You betcha. I'll tell you a funny story. So there was a time in my life where I made a prediction that computing and telephony and consumer electronic and the entertainment business were going to merge into one industry. And I would say we could argue today that that's basically happened. And I said that that would happen in 3 years. I was right about the prediction. I was not right about the 3 years because I made that in 1989.
There you
I
go.
was only off by about 30 years.
Fair enough.
So it happened. It happened.
So Michael, share a story where someone pushed you or inspired you that you could do it, and what the impact of that person had on the successes that you've achieved over the years.
Well, I was thinking about impact. You had sent me a note on somebody who was about impact. And when I was at business school, I went to Babson College in Wellesley, Massachusetts, and I had a mentor. He was an executive in residence. He was the first executive residence at Babson, and I was his first victim. And I had run several organizations on the campus, and he was a mentor to me. And one of them was an M&A club. In the 80s, mergers and acquisitions were a big deal. It was the hot thing going on in New York City. It was the best career you could have. And my mentor had been part of a hostile takeover, very knowledgeable about M&As. And I found myself at the executive dining room of Raytheon Corporation. And I'm meeting with Chuck, and his name was Chuck Schmidt. He died only a few years ago at 90 years old. And Chuck had run a bunch of companies, and he had been recruited out of Babson to go run the Amana business for Raytheon. And I'm having lunch with Chuck, and he says, "What are you thinking about doing when you graduate?" And I said, "I'm thinking of going to Wall Street and doing M&A. I had just spent the last 2 years running the largest business organization on campus, all about M&A. And I brought in, the guys, some of the biggest M&A deals that had happened in my time at college came to school, and I brought them in and all of this." And he looks at me and he said, "I went to Amana because Amana is not a company. Amana is a town in Iowa, and it's failing. And if the company fails, the town dies. And that is what I'm doing. Why did I invest in you for you to turn around and become basically a whore and go work on Wall Street? I thought better of you." And I did not apply for one job. I did not take one interview. I never pursued that career. And that was one lunch. And I had that much respect for Chuck, and he was right. Are you going to be a builder, or are you going to be an exploiter? What are you going to be? Pick.
Wow.
And I picked. I said, I want to build things like he wanted to build things. Yeah. He had, in his past, he had saved a town that was a paper mill town, and the town was going under, the mill was going under, and he told his company, "Give me 18 months, turn the company around." And he saved the town, and he saved the town in Amana too. Wow. And so you don't hear those stories as much anymore in society, but that was a guy that through my entire life had an impact, and that was 35, 36 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. So, Michael, outside of the timing is everything, what's your biggest learning as a CEO and business owner?
Well, I was taught a lesson at business school, which still is true today. Happiness is positive cash flow. So I think that is still true today. I would say this. You need to think about what your job is, as a president, as a CEO, as a whatever. And I've never thought that it was about me or that it's my business. Okay. It's my customer's business. It's my employees' business. It's my shareholders' business. It's my partner's business. And with that comes a lot of responsibility, because often I could be, at the moment, could be making a lot more money doing something different. But I have a commitment to my investors. I have a commitment to everyone we work with, and that guides how we think about every interaction that we have. And you know, I'm in the advertising business. I will be honest with you. I believe the advertising business, the digital advertising business today, is one of, if not the most corrupt business in the world. And I don't say that lightly. I think that the waste and fraud in the ad business is somewhere in the order of between 60 to 100 billion dollars a year in the US alone. And so we all pay for that fraud and that waste. We pay for that in higher prices because the advertisers have to recoup that.
Sure.
And so the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world are getting away with some pretty not good things. And so we feel like we have a purpose to bring some honesty to the business, and that we care about our advertisers, that what they're getting is what they actually paid for, and that we are delivering the value that we have promised, and that we're doing it in a way that restores customer privacy instead of stealing it, and creates incentives for the market that push advertising to the place where it belongs, which is while I'm shopping in a place that I am intending to engage with that information, and take it out of the places that are disruptive and bad for the consumer life experience.
Right.
And so that is the primary motivator that drives our thinking. And I think that if you bring that empathy to your business, you will be better. And you know, one of my clients was Apple, and I provided a lot of value for Apple, but Apple obviously provided a lot of value to me and taught me a lot of things. And one of the things that they taught me was, not would somebody use it, but would I? It's a very different thing. Would I want that? Would I actually use that feature or that thought or that whatever? Would that be the experience I would want personally?
Yeah.
And that personalization of that attribute was very paramount in their thinking when they designed products and created consumer experiences. And I think that is something that every small business owner or owner of any size can bring to it, which is, are you there to exploit your customers, or are you there to help your customers? It goes back to Chuck Schmidt. What are you building, and for whom, and for what purpose, right?
Yes. Makes me think of Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, as well, in terms of, I love the passion and the focus that you have on doing what's right. So tell us a little bit more about how are you disrupting that advertising business? Give us more details of how your business model works.
Yeah, so it is very disruptive. The basic premise of the ad business is, I am going to reach you at the time and place where you least want to get an ad. And in order to get your attention, I am going to steal as much private information about you so that I can optimize my time and place. So I'm picking the people most likely to benefit from my disruption. Okay? And the ad location is sold based upon that private information and the match of that private information to an individual. Okay? It has no correlation to context, doesn't care that you are in the wrong time and place. It often doesn't know that you already bought the product 3 weeks ago. It doesn't know that you had a bad experience with that brand in the past. It doesn't know anything, okay? All it knows is the bad stuff that you don't want them to know. And so the whole model is broken. Our approach said, there's only one moment in time when you actually want to see an ad. And by the way, we want to see ads. When I am actively shopping for a product at the moment I am shopping. Now, I might be shopping on my couch in my living room.
Sure.
Okay. But the moment I stop shopping, leave me alone. So where is the place where that actually happens? If you're old enough to remember, we used to have this thing called the Sears catalog. And the Sears catalog came out in the summertime. And our parents would ask us what we wanted for Christmas. It was called the wish book.
Yes.
And it was a way for the retailer to help educate us on what to buy. And those days have long been gone, and the retailers have now become fulfillment centers and not really educators. So what we're trying to do is restore the ability for the retailer to help educate the shopper at the moment that they want to be educated. And then our ads are delivered not based upon the demographic of the shopper, but based upon the shopper's proximity to the product. So if you are in front of the product on the e-commerce site, we assume you want to know about that product. And we match make the ad to the context and not to the consumer. So the whole ad business has no idea what ad it's delivering. It's only delivering a demographic, and the consumer, the vendor who pays the most for that demographic is the ad that runs, irrespective of context. So our patents and the things that we've done is to match that time and place with the right content. And by doing that, we eliminate a huge inefficiency. There's one more inefficiency that we eliminate. Today, we have these things called advertising companies. And what do? They buy advertising. And again, they're trying to buy advertising based upon the inefficiency of the buy-sell, because they're trying to keep the fraud out of the hands of the advertisers. That's what the agencies are trying to do. There's this fight between the publishers who are faking traffic and doing all sorts of nefarious things, and the advertiser. So the advertiser pays a huge fee to the companies to buy the ads, okay? But in retail, every retailer has a relationship with every vendor that sells their products. They have a buy-sell relationship already. What we're trying to do is facilitate the direct buying and selling between those two parties. And because they can only advertise where they show up, there is no arbitrage about fake traffic or things like that. And there's no complexities. And so we are eliminating the need for middlemen, which just make the cost of the advertising way more expensive for both parties. So we're driving efficiency in the business from a supply chain point of view, and we're driving consumer experience efficiency, giving them the information they're actually looking for at the moment of highest receptivity. So this has required us to change everything in the business. And the way that we think about it, I have three examples that we think about. Number one is Walmart. Number two is Southwest. And number three is Enterprise, Rent-A-Car. Those are three companies we think about. Walmart started as a rural company. They sold where the big companies weren't.
Right.
And because they went where no one else was, they built a world that they could control and manage. And then they moved closer and closer into the cities, and now are the dominant company that they are. Same thing happened with Southwest. Southwest went to the airports that were unpopular, Love Field, Oakland, these types of locations. They didn't go into the major airports initially, and this gave them an ability to participate. Enterprise is probably the best example of that, because they weren't at the airport, and the idea was Rent-A-Car companies were all at the airport. And they started in towns. And what most people don't know is Enterprise is basically bigger than all of the other guys combined.
Wow.
They're bigger than Hertz and Avis and Dollar together.
Wow.
And they did that by going where people weren't. And so we sort of see our strategy as following that model, is going where they aren't, doing what they don't, and thinking about it in a very fresh way, and trying to be the ethical player in a space that is inherently extremely unethical.
Very cool. So, Michael, let's talk about business success. So we know that it doesn't happen in isolation. Tell us about one of the biggest challenges you've had over the years, and someone who came alongside you to help you through that.
Well, I'll give you a couple of examples. So three examples. One, I had lunch with my first boss out of college. I hadn't seen him in 25 years. I was in Boston. He and I had lunch, and he had just during the first .com boom, he had sold his company. He made a bunch of money. They went IPO for 150 million or something like this. And I said, talk to me about the story. And he had raised like $75 million, and he had this great exit. And he said, but don't misunderstand. I chased payroll for 4 years. And right before we were going to go public, somebody gave me like $75 million. And then we went public, and it all happened, and it looked like it'd always been there, and it was never there. Okay. That was story number one. Story number two is I was at a conference for SaaS companies, and there was a company who was winning the SaaS Company of the Year award, which was DocuSign. And their sales was like this, and the guy's on stage, and he's telling his story, and he said, understand, we're a 7-year-old company. And for 6 years, our sales was like this. Okay. Now you're seeing me now, and my sales are like this, but understand. And so you just got to be patient for it to come. Right. So during this time, we are a 10-year-old company, and our revenues still haven't, because we're too early. We were just too early. So I've had a board member named Brad Smith, who has taught me a tremendous amount about managing my investors and building the relationship and the trust with them so that they stay with me during this rocky time, as we've been ahead of the game and before that inflection point. And so I've learned a lot from him. He's just a very wise person.
That's amazing. So as you think about all the people that you've had in your life, if I asked you to pick 3 that have been the most helpful to you, that you're the most grateful for as part of all of your different business successes, who are those 3 people, and how'd they help you?
Okay, I'll pick 3. So first one is a guy named Ron Okamoto. Ron was a business colleague when I was at Canon. He was a peer of my boss, so he is senior to me. And then I worked with him as a consultant at Adobe and at Apple. And I remember probably in 2002, he pulled me aside and he said, I need to tell you, you're a really bad writer. You need to go fix that. You got you're too smart to write so bad, or something in that. And that was not the first time he's kicked me in the ass, but it was one of the times. And I went and I read a bunch of books and I worked on it. And 3 years later, I was a published author. Okay. But a good friend is the one who tells you the things you don't want to hear. Yeah. And when I want truth. He is the guy I go to for truth. And he will tell me straight. And that's a good mentor. He also is a genius. It helps. So that's one. The second one is one that I've acquired in this company. I have a guy named Charlie Bickerton. And Charlie Bickerton is my largest investor. And Charlie prays for me. He doesn't pray for the business. Prays for me. Yeah. What's going on in your family? What's going on with such and such? You know, with my mother-in-law who's dying at the moment, and he prays for me.
Wow.
And that kind of support allows me to know that we just have a trust with each other. That he knows that I'm trying my hardest for him, but I know that he is contending for me in ways that are not typical. Wow. And that's quite an amazing thing to have. Okay. And that is something I'm immensely grateful for. The third one is my friendship with Dave Mosby, who I wrote that book with. And we are innovators, and we just ideate together and have great fun together. And he's just a great mentor, so much so that he's on our patents because he helped contribute, even though he was not an employee. He's an advisor to the company. But he was very instrumental to the thinking about the business. And so on the patents that he was involved in the beginning of the company, he is named on those patents.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so Mosby has been another wonderful mentor of mine. And he's been a 4 or 5 time CEO before, and maybe 15 years older than me or 17 years older than me. Yeah. I've always collected older mentors. It's been something in my life since my earliest days.
Fantastic. So, Michael, as we kind of pivot and think about the future over the next 3 to 5 years, what are the biggest challenges that you see that you're going to face in achieving the business goals, and who are the types of people you're going to need in your life or in your company to help you solve those?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm always thinking, like right now, I'm in the middle of a joint venture deal. And, what's going through my mind is, who's my joint venture expert? Who can I talk to who's going to coach me? Because if I have the mental model to think about things correctly, I can make better decisions. And so I'm always looking for that expert. And the funny thing is, in my mind, I found a resource online that explained a certain way to think about it. And that led me to, hey, I've got an investor who has expertise in that domain. And, later this week, I'm intending to reach out to him. Awesome. And so I'm always looking for that. We will need capital to grow. As we're landing some of these big accounts that we're landing right now, they will scale ahead of us. And we will, the ad business, we run the ad, we have the cost, then the ad is paid for by the advertiser to the retailer, and then the retailer pays us. The time lag is quite long before we get the cash. And I remember, happiness is positive cash flow. So I will need working capital to manage as we grow. I was like a research assistant in college on cash flow, and the fact that fast growing companies will run out of cash faster than failing companies because the cash gets caught up in the working capital of the business. So I'm quite sensitive to that. So I am thinking through who will not only fund that cash, but who will educate me on how to acquire that cash in the most efficient way to help me grow. And I'm part of the joint venture is they have quite a bit of sophistication in that area. So that's one of the benefits they will be bringing to us in that domain. The second is sales and marketing. Even though I'm a marketing guy, I was a, consultant in marketing. we need more of that customer acquisition, transactional marketing expertise, and it is a quite dynamic field. I had a very nice conversation with our mutual buddy, Tony, yesterday, and he's providing some wise counsel in such domains, but skills in those areas are scarce. The really good ones are quite scarce, and that's in the second area. And then the third is AI. We have some AI patents, but we have not leveraged the full capacity of our capability. And while I am a data guy, I ran a data company, and I have a data mindset, I need a person who can do that for me with my level of skill and be really innovative in their thinking around the data business, because the data business will require, there's a symbiotic relationship between the AI, machine learning, and the data business. And our ultimate goal is that the ads self-optimize so that typically a person who is advertising, the advertising buyer may be very young and inexperienced at the company. They're not the CMO. Right. And so if we have a way to automate that functionality such that the best practices are dynamically delivered through machine learning, we can deliver tremendous return on investment for our advertisers. And I that's the one area I have not identified the experts yet. So that's an area that I am I'm keeping an eye out for, and over the next year or so we'll utilize. We've done experiments. We've hired some interns in the AI space and learned a lot, and we know that we have the capacity, but we haven't leveraged it yet. That's one of the big long-term opportunities of our business.
Yeah. What an exciting space to be in, that everything is so far ahead of everybody else that it feels like, correct me if I'm wrong, that every day you're learning in areas that don't really exist yet, or just barely are existing.
Yeah, I think that there's an interesting problem, because the ad business is old. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the digital ad business is old. Digital ad business is 25 years old at this point, thereabouts. But we're doing it different enough that part of it is, what are the best things that we can learn about the ad business that are useful to transfer, that we are unfamiliar with? And what are the parts of the business that are nefarious and we should shed and not participate in? And there is definitely a challenge in linguistics and in mindset between the two domains, because I had a guy tell me once, why would you want to advertise on the retailer site? The purpose of advertising is to get them to come to the retailer site. Well, for the retailer maybe, but for the brand, the goal is to get them to buy. Yes. And so there's mental models that are different between the two. And I would say the intellectual challenge for us is to craft a new way of thinking with a large group of people in a short amount of time with very little capital. That is the hard algorithm to sort out. And that's what we are focused on as a company, is trying to create the highest efficiency. It's funny, I was interviewing for a job once, and I had a company that I ultimately did not want to work for, but I won't mention the name, but they said, we are the lowest cost producer, and we've never met the lowest cost producer not win the business. That was an interesting mindset. And so our thought process is, how do we build the efficiencies in the system so that we are delivering the highest ROI of any choice that they have? And if we do that, and we do it honorably, we will win a very sizable part of the business. And that's kind of how we get there, and how we capitalize it, and how we do it in a way that's not going to that's going to yield the highest outcome for our investors. That's the interesting calculus that we focus on every day.
Yeah. And again, I'll just pull back what you said earlier and you're doing it all because it's the right thing to do, as opposed to, just taking advantage of other people, which I think is just amazing that that's your mindset.
Yeah, and we're very grateful. We have a management team that is very equally oriented that way, and we have an investor pool that is equally oriented that way, and that has given them patience and us patience, and a tremendous amount of trust between the two parties, because we have a common goal that if we win by doing bad, we didn't win. And I'll give you this one story. So I have a friend who's venture capitalist, and he had sold his company to a big company.
Okay.
And his CTO stole the code and held it for ransom, and told the acquirer, you need to give me an additional $10 million, or I will not release the source code for the deal. Okay. And they all acquiesced, and the guy got the money. And within 2 years, the guy was divorced and broke. And it didn't disappoint my buddy.
No.
And it's you go, okay, there's something, the guy.
That's a happy end to that story, right?
It's you got what you deserved. You did something criminal. You got away with it. You thought, but you never got away with it.
Yeah.
And so I keep those things in the back of my mind, that who you partner with matters a lot. And I have great team. We are peers. I happen to have a role that's CEO, but we are peers. We see each other that way. That's how I see it. And I trust them, and they trust me, and my board trusts me, and I trust my board, and my investors trust me, and my customers trust me. And if I do that, I will be successful even if we fail.
Yeah.
That's if I have that mindset, I'm in the right place.
Yeah. Amen to that. So last question here, Michael, if something catastrophic was to happen in the business today, who's the first person you'd call, and what would that conversation sound like?
Yeah, it's, I wouldn't say every day there's a catastrophe, but almost every day there's I think that I am very, I don't have a mentor. I have 100.
Yeah.
Okay. Typically, historically, I would go to my father. My father's a genius and a very successful business person his whole life. My father's in a current health state where that is not necessarily viable anymore, which is a challenge, because he was always somebody whose wisdom was always right. Just because he was a CEO for almost 50 years.
Wow.
And, ran company with a quarter of a million people type of size company. So he brought a wealth of experience, just on M&A and so forth. He did 300 deals or something like that. So he brought this experience that I had rare access to. But, I had a situation, like I said, on Monday, this such and such happened. Who do I go to? I have a situation today. Who do I go to? And so I've always fostered wise counsel, and I'm always seeking it. I'm not seeking it for validation. Okay, so a lot of people I know can't be decisive, so they ask others to decide for them.
Yes.
That is not my MO. My MO is, how should I think about it? Not what is the right answer. How should I think about it? What is the criteria that I should use to make the decision I need to make? Where are the risk factors in the things that I'm deciding to do? And given that, now what? I will ultimately have to apply the data that is relevant to my circumstance, and make the decisions based upon the attributes I probably won't have had the time to fully explain to the person.
Right.
Okay. But what I want is, I've done a bunch of stuff on understanding how we think, and we cannot think without a mental model. And so you have to start with the paradigm, with the mental model, with the framework for how to think. Right. And so the biggest thing that I'm trying to get is the framework. And if I understand the framework, and I am getting honest input about the sources of data and the quality of the inputs that's coming in, I can render a good decision if the framework is a good framework. And so that's what I'm focused on. And I'm always looking at the industry for what is the skill I lack or the firm lacks. What is the person, who is the person who will have the framework?
Right.
And then go acquire that framework through relationship building, and maybe giving a little bit piece of the company or whatever it is I have to do to gain that, and then partner with them for the success of the business.
I love that perspective, Michael. Again, it goes back to what you've already been sharing, and that is, you're my interpretation, right? You're very humble, right? It's like, hey, let's do what's the right thing overall, as opposed to it's all about me, and who are the right people to talk to get that get the right framework or the right perspective from, and then pull that all together, and that final piece of, and then ultimately, right, you've got to make the decision based on how you process all that information. I think that's just an awesome lesson for everybody listening to be able to implement into their own businesses or into their own professional careers.
Yeah, it's funny. I did a secret video on the life of my father, and I interviewed a guy who had been his roommate in college, and he said, "Your father was the type of guy, or is the type of guy, that would always seek those who would help him to solve the problem, as opposed to solving the problem himself." It was a very interesting thing. And this was only a couple of years ago. But it really struck me, which was instead of I'm going to do it, who can I co-opt? Together, we're going to go and do this. And so I have never been a selfish person. Like, I want all the money, I want all the power, I want all the, so I do have that mindset. That's, hey, how do we become a we, and how do we go and solve this problem? And were I to have capital, I'd probably have 5 times as many people in the business. Right. And I would give up the stake to do it, because I think the opportunity is there. Right. And it's a mindset. And a lot of startup people feel possessive and feel this need that they have to control everything and do everything. And I think that the idea that says, who can I bring along that could help me achieve this goal, is a worldview that I didn't realize I had, and where it had come from. And I would say, from this experience in preparing for this call, I didn't realize how much Chuck Schmidt had affected me. And seeing it in that context was quite interesting. And I appreciate that, Tim, because I realized that one lunch, and it was more than lunch. I mean, we had been friends for a year at that point. And he had mentored me from my first day as CEO of a 300-person organization to that moment. But it was a pivotal moment in my life. And it obviously affected all of the decisions that I've made ever since. And so I would encourage everybody to find a mentor, find a coach, find somebody who can make you better.
Amen. So Yeah, wow, Michael, you've been blessed with some incredible people that you've just shared with us about along your journey. If they were all here on the show today, what would you want to say to them?
No, thank you. Thank you. And don't give up on me. Yeah, I am not past the need for the need. Okay.
Fair
And
enough.
literally I've got those guys are active in my life today. I mean, Chuck has passed, but a lot of those guys I have come to in the past weeks and months, and Charlie's praying for me today. Yeah. And I still need him to pray for me tomorrow. And so to Brad and to everybody who has come along, all my board members, all of my investors, thank you. It is a team effort.
Wonderful. Well, hey, Michael, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. And thank you so much for giving us a gift of your time and sharing your insights and being on the show today.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to spend time with you.
Awesome. To everyone who tuned in, thanks for listening to the Self-Made is a Myth show with your host, Coach Tim Campsell. Be sure to help us spread this movement by liking the show and posting it on your social media channels. To join our movement, go to bemadtogether.com. All right, folks, that's a wrap. Make sure to pay it forward, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.